welcome our viewers to early morning podcast with Dr. Rich. We met a few weeks ago, and actually I've known of him for years, and so it's good to have him on the podcast. So, Dr. Rich, just introduce yourself, who you are, your occupation, and who you serve, and then we'll get into the podcast.
Thanks, Podcast Pete. I'm Dr. Rich Moriarty. I'm a chiropractor. My practice is in Kennesaw, Georgia. Mm-hmm. I've been a chiropractor for 5 years, but this office is my very own, and it opened in April of this year.
Okay.
So it's been very exciting.
So, I know a few chiropractors, and there's always kind of a story behind how they got into chiropractic, because obviously it's different than the medical route that a lot of people are in. So what inspired you to be a chiropractor?
There's a great story of how this all came about from the beginning. Mm-hmm. It started with my father. He was really sick in his teens. He had lost a little brother to an illness, and his father had actually passed. And he was sick, and around 15, 16, he was having all these surgeries. He was going to all these doctors. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with him. They did these intestinal surgeries, removed a lot of intestines, and still no results. Doctors gave a prognosis of about 6 months to live at this rate. And his mother, my grandmother, was frantically looking for solutions from anybody. Her boss, where she works, talked to her and said, "My brother is a chiropractor." Now, they lived in Jersey City, New Jersey. Uh-huh. And he said, my brother's a chiropractor in Brooklyn. Please take him to him, see if it helps. What do you got to lose at that point? So she started going 3 times a week to this chiropractor from Jersey City. So take a bus, go all the way up there, and he slowly started to improve. Few months in the care, he kept getting better. The 6 months later, he was in complete remission of all his symptoms. Wow. So that chiropractic care saved his life. And he was so grateful for what chiropractic did for him. He became a chiropractor.
Whoa.
Now, it turns out he had Crohn's disease. Now, back then, they didn't have the fancy stuff to figure it out and all that. Yep. So, that saved his life, and he was just so eternally grateful. He became a chiropractor, and that's kind of how the story all unfolded. And, obviously, growing up in that household, I realized the power of chiropractic and how amazing it was for my family. And it kind of changed the whole course of history for his family, his genes and his family.
Yeah. The idea of a decision by one person starts a ripple effect in generations is really exciting because, and look, I know a lot of medical doctors, and there's a lot of, good ones out there. I'm not saying anything, but a person had told me a couple of years ago, the amount of information they get on the holistic and the natural part of medicine is very little. So it's all, it's how do I treat it and how do I cut it? Now, if you're trained a certain way, you're naturally going to gravitate towards that. So what do you think, like, from a holistic approach to chiropractic? What is your philosophy on that?
Well, a lot of the great chiropractors I've learned from over the years, it's the body's self-healing. Okay, so it's an inside-out approach, whereas a lot of medical is outside in. So there's a problem, a lot of medical things are figure it out what to help the inside of the body from the outside. Okay, chiropractic believes if the inside is maintained, then it's going to do what it's meant to do, and that's, continue to heal and live a long, healthy life. So it's that inside-out approach, and it's a lot different than symptom-based of there's a problem, do this, there's a problem, do that. It's more of a make sure everything's running well on the inside, and then your body can deal with the unbelievable complicated thing of health and how to maintain that, because it's extremely complicated. We have billions and billions of things going on, and
Yes.
cells and all these things. They're so complicated. It's not as simple as, well, you just need a vitamin. It's like, well, it's a little more to that to get the full effect. Digestion, things like that, sleep. There's so many complex things. Water, those are really important to maintain health. Not a matter of just, you need a supplement or something from the outside.
Right. Where did your training come from that you're in the Atlanta area?
So
Did you get trained locally?
I went to the best chiropractic school. Now, I don't want to be biased. There's a few very, very good ones, but Life University is where I went to school. I graduated in 2018. Wonderful education. Keep in touch with many of the professors there and many of the people who kind of guided me, because I didn't go to chiropractic school until I was almost about 30.
Okay.
I did I'm going to figure it out on my own, and something is going to, I love chiropractic, but I'm going to see what's out there. And then I realized, this is what I love. So although I'm not the biggest fan of school, school gets tiring through undergrad. I said, you know what? I love chiropractic. So I went to Life University, and then when I graduated, I worked for some wonderful doctors in the Atlanta area.
Right.
That kind of, helped me perfect my craft.
And when you say perfect your craft, so I know you got the activator, then you have the hands. Which technique have you been leaning towards?
I'm a full spine adjuster, and I prefer my hands.
Okay.
There are a pretty decent bit of people that come and get activator for some parts of their body.
Yeah.
Some parts can't be adjusted because of surgeries or, personal things or preferences. So I'm pretty good with the activator. I prefer hands-on adjusting, and my table also does drop. So if anybody's familiar with chiropractic, where you lie on your side and you get side adjustment for your low back, some people that doesn't work with that well. So I also use a lot of drop table, where the table goes up and then it goes down.
Right. What's your philosophy? I know, the perception, there's always misperceptions out there. And like one of them for a non-chiropractor like myself, and I know that it's a misperception that some will want you to keep coming back. What's your philosophy as far as how you treat your patients?
Well, first, I have to see if I can help them, which is always the first thing. I can't help everybody for necessarily ailments. If, you have a wrist injury, you might have a wrist injury. It's not exactly connected to the spine, or a finger injury, So I'm going to assess the spine. It's always going to go back to the spine. I'm looking for those misalignments that are the key ones. Those are called subluxations. And subluxations is the nerve interference from those misalignments. And if I see that there's subluxations somewhere in that spine, then I think I can help them. And the first thing is to get them under regular care, where they're going to be seen frequently, especially at first. As they start improving, they're going to start getting spaced out more in between visits, and frequency is going to become less often. The reason why you should get adjusted in general, for the rest of your life, is because you're always going to have those misalignments in some degree, and they have to be maintained. We go through a lot of things. Most people from their jobs, they're sitting too much or they're standing too much, and they're in bad positions. So those misalignments are always going to be reoccurring in some capacity. So that's where the maintenance comes into chiropractic care.
Right. I was just turning off my phone. Thank you. Sorry for that interruption. There we go. Okay. So what would you say, like, when you say
subluxation,
what, for the person that's not familiar with that, what can you explain? Because we have seniors over here at Overture, and some have had chiropractic care when they come here, some have not. So if a person is not familiar with chiropractic care, can you explain maybe to our viewers, like, what does that mean and why is the spine so important?
Yeah, a subluxation. Okay, if you think of the spine, okay, you got the spinal cord running through, all the nerves are going out throughout the whole body, and they come back in through the spine. Now, if you have a misalignment in your spine, I'm going to kind of use my hands that are going to put pressure on the nerve. That's going to cause interference. That interference is the subluxation. By getting adjusted and getting that alignment, now the interference is removed and you're subluxation free, as you could say. Okay, so it's basically just taking pressure off the nerve through an adjustment.
So for, like, how we're, like, even us right now, we're sitting and we're leaning forward.
Yeah.
So our head, which is a few pounds, is leaning forward. So what do you recommend people? Is there anything outside of, like, they're getting adjusted? Do you share with your patients, like, things to do, exercises that will?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because what we do in between visits is really important. If I adjust somebody and then the rest of the day they're looking down on their phone for the rest of the day, well, that's not going to help. That's going to put that pressure. And just to kind of backtrack on what you said about the head weighs, let's say the head weighs 10 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds, somewhere in that range. Every inch forward that we have our head is an extra 10 pounds of pressure. So if you got 2-3 inches, you're putting 30 to 40 pounds of pressure on this low neck, which is why people are walking around with tight necks and tight. People say all the time, oh, my shoulders are so tight. But you have 20 or 30 pounds of pressure because your head's forward all day long. So basic things that I always, it depends on the job. Let's assume that it's a person who sits too much and looks down on their phone too much, which I would say is a large percentage of people. And now, unfortunately, younger people too. So you got to watch your posture. So postural things when you're driving, when you're at work, ergonomics with the desk and the computer and all those things, those are going to be good. There's some basic stretches that I like to do in the morning for myself because I end up sitting, especially on days when I have to do a lot of paperwork, where I'm going to bring my shoulders back. I'm going to do stretches like this. And what I always say is in between the shoulder blades is where you want to feel that stretch because this area between your shoulder blades is not worked enough. And all the pressure's on the front part. So like our chest is tight and our shoulders are tight and our back is weak. So we need to strengthen those back muscles and start getting, stretching. Now with low backs, it's the same kind of concept where we're overworking some areas and other areas are underworked. So let's take a low back now for this. How often are we stretching the lower powerhouse of our body, which is our legs? The legs are doing the tremendous amount of work they're supposed to. But what ends up happening is we're tight, we're a little weak in some areas, and we're not really utilizing our whole body, and our back is compensating. So it's all about not having some areas compensate and having other areas start to work like they should work. So you want to stretch the hamstrings, the quads, and all the stretches in your lower extremities so that when you bend down, you have that flexibility and strength to carry the capacity of what you need to do. And same with this, you want your shoulders nice and strong, want your back sitting up straight. And that's going to take a lot of pressure off those areas so that when you get adjusted, now the spine's aligned and it's not going to misalign as often or as noticeably.
Yeah, I know I have a PT, he actually lives right next to me. And he has me taking my shoulder blades because I'm trying to get the left side working the same as the right side. So he has me doing, exercises to push the shoulder blades together and get both blades moving inward to kind of get that used to using that left side that I have to get going again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I was never a big fan of stretching growing up.
Right.
I just never did it. And now I see as I got older that, man, it is so valuable Even basic yoga or anything like that on a nice Sunday is really good for the body. It
Right.
relaxes everything. It gets everything moving. And now you're like, wow, this is a lot easier to drive properly and not feel like I have to hunch over the steering wheel when I'm driving.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, watch the repetitive motions that you do throughout the day, because we're all unique and we
Yeah.
all have little habits that we do. We sit a certain way, we lean a certain way. And notice, like, do you always put your arm up when you're sitting this way? Well, that's going to keep creating those misalignments. Do you always sit with your legs and your hips like this? Do you have a big wallet in the back that you're always sitting on? Those little things could be corrected, and only you can notice what you do throughout the day. But watch next time you're at a traffic light, especially a long one, and watch your posture. And then if you notice you're sitting like this at the light, just start sitting up straight, have your head back against the headrest. And for those couple minutes, there's a little stretch that you just did while you're waiting 2 minutes for that light to change. And those things are really helpful. I mean, it's baby steps, but I'm telling you, it adds up.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that because we have a person that we work with that's on the West Coast, BAM Metrics, and he works with a lot of, he calls them desk jockeys. They're sitting at the desk all day long, and and he gets some wall stretches, just all kinds of different things, because he's big into the movement and getting the body stretching and stuff like that. We have over here at Overture. I see it because I didn't realize when I moved in, the average age was 78. So it's a little bit on the higher side than maybe another place of similar amenities. When you see people, bent over on and rollators, is that from years of just having your head forward and not doing those stretches? Is that what causes something like the bending over?
Yeah, I mean, the body's number one thing is to keep the entire thing intact and going to what it needs to do. So it's going to sacrifice parts of the, subgroups of the body in order to get those things accomplished. It's always going to take care of the whole organism, as self-preservation. So it's going to sacrifice here. It's going to say, oh, well, I guess this is how I'm going to have to operate because I want to keep this whole thing moving. So you have to take those subgroups and start to reset them back to where they need to be. So if you focus on the areas that are the problem areas and you catch them before they, kind of become not able to be improved, but now just keep it from getting worse. And that's not the worst thing in the world, but it's better to catch it before it gets to that where, you're not going to really reset time if it's 70 years and it's not going to go back to an 18-year-old, but you can start working on those subgroups and get them, because, you're going to notice them in your 30s and 40s and 50s pretty noticeably in certain areas of the body. It's very rare that I'm going to find people that are just going to have, big problems in here, and here. It's usually one or two big groups at the most. Right. And those are the ones that are just going to be from whatever job you're working or whatever lifestyle, you've done for decades.
When you're not like perfecting your trade and adjusting, what do you like to do for fun?
Oh, I love outdoor stuff. So I'm a big golf guy. I like getting into pickleball, basketball. I enjoy the outdoors. Georgia's like the best area because there's so many places to explore and go hiking and just kind of, have some quality time with my wife and, do things that are outdoors. We have a little pup named Max, a little puppy. He's 2 years old now and love to do stuff with him. So yeah, pretty much anything outdoors. I do love the beach on vacation. So if I get a long enough stretch, I'm going to try and catch a beach at some point.
Right. How do you balance? I know certain chiropractors do like 3 days a week, 4 days a week. How does your schedule work? Because, it's very intense when you're doing adjustments throughout the day. What's your schedule like?
Well, I have Monday and Thursday are days when I'm here for most of the day. Now I do take a lunch, but
Okay.
those are the days when I'm getting the most adjusting done. And then
Okay.
Saturday mornings are pretty busy too.
Okay.
So then Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, there's an afternoon on Tuesday when I'm here and I'm scheduled. But like Wednesday and Friday, those are by appointments. So if somebody needs me, they can, schedule online. And
Right.
make it very clear. I don't mind coming in. I live by my office, which is set up
Right.
that way. But those days are pretty much cleared to kind of do all the things that, marketing and just peace of mind, having
Right.
a break from chiropractic. But yeah, I basically do similar to most chiropractors where there's some days when it is just chiropractic and that's all I'm doing. I'm not paying bills at work. I'm not doing anything. It's just, focus on the patient because that's really an important moment. That adjustment is critical and it needs to
Right.
be focused on that. It doesn't need to be focused on, all the little things that come up in life. Those are for the off days.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why a lot of chiropractors do it that way.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, I'm a kind of I call it Pomodoro, where I'll work 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break, intense,
Yeah.
concentration, and then give the brain a break and then come back and do it again.
In today's society, especially, I don't want to just blame everything on today's time because it's always been like that.
Yeah.
But getting distracted and getting things that just can't happen, to have effective chiropractic care. It's got to be really locked in on that specific patient because we are all unique. There is no patient that is just like the next one. It is not like that.
What would you say? I mean, I know that you're in an organization that meets on Thursday. What has been successful for you in growing your chiropractic practice? What has worked for you?
BNI has been really valuable. I've lived in Cobb County for 27 years. So I moved here when I was 13 with my mom and my sister. And, I have roots here, but I don't have any real business connections. So when I opened this office, I didn't work as an associate anywhere around here. I was in, a little bit north of here. So I was just establishing, people to know and contact and, just building relationships. So BNI's really helped me build relationships. The Kennesaw Business Association has also been very helpful in just building relationships because, I don't sell myself. I don't sell the office. I just meet people and try and help others and others try and help me. And it's just a nice relationship. And that's how it's grown.
That's awesome. And I know when we started, we wanted to be respectful of your time. So how can people get a hold of you?
The best way is to go to enrichchiro.com and schedule their first visit if they'd like to come in for a consultation. Gotcha. Okay. That's the easiest. It doesn't, if I can't help you, I'm not going to charge you.
Right.
I mean, simple as that. It's not expensive. Or if they have a question, they can always call me. I have a phone number. It's 678-310-0388. That's the office line. Now that goes to my cell phone. So if I'm not in the office, it's going to go to my cell phone. I'm almost always going to answer if I'm by it. And I don't mind answering questions. Sometimes people wonder, is it stupid to ask you this? Or can you help me with this? I don't mind, and most times I'm going to say, please come into the office so I can see, see if I can help you. But those are the two ways. Call me or go on the website and just book a consultation and see if I can help you.
And where are you located? Where is your office?
It's off of Wooten Lake Road in Kennesaw, which is right by the Publix on Wade Green Road.
Okay.
So it's close to Ackworth. So most of my patients live in either Ackworth, Kennesaw, or Marietta. So those are the three biggest areas that are close to me. And, a lot of families are starting to come in. And I'm just so eternally grateful that, because it's a family-friendly office. There's a kids' play area. It's not a scary doctor's office for kids to come in and have a good time and know that they have their own space to play and and they don't have to be quiet, and they can be kids and have a good time.
Yeah, my youngest, who's now 30, let me think, 32 or 3, she was adjusted in like the first couple weeks by Dr. Morgan, which was over in Austell years ago. I'm sure he's retired and, not doing chiropractic because he was, older. But yeah, so I've always, believed in chiropractic myself, just as a general philosophy that spine doesn't always, is not always aligned, because we're active and doing things. So I'd like to always give my guest the last insight for our viewers. What would you like our guests to take away from this podcast?
Well, I just want anybody who feels like chiropractic could possibly help them to please give my office an opportunity. It's one of the dreams of mine to have my own chiropractic office, and having it here in Kennesaw, I think people will see that I truly do care, about each patient, and I try and help them in any way possible. So if they just give me an opportunity and come into the office and see if I can help them, it would be eternally grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, we're going to put your links in the show notes. So if anybody's driving and they're trying to go write it down, don't worry, it'll be in the show notes. So you can just click on it and be able to get a hold of Dr. Rich's office. So we want to thank you for being on the show.
Podcast Pete, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And you really educated. I mean, myself, I understand a little bit more because that's been part of my life, but there's a lot of people out there that hear things, and, hearing something and having it be gospel are two different things. And so you really helped to educate people on what really is going on and why chiropractic care can be something they can embrace and get benefits from it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, Dr. Rich.
Bye-bye.